Alright, Usopp, get out of my way. Alright, now here we are. We have lovely, lovely Robin. Which honestly, if there was ever, like, I know Luffy has, Boa Hancock wants to marry him and she's already called the Pirate Empress, but if, when Luffy does become Pirate King, out of all the women that Luffy has met in his life, so far, I think the two that I think are the highest contenders for, because behind every good king there has to be a good queen, right? So like, and yes, definitely Boa's in the running. She's already said she wants to marry him, but really, I think the queen should be either Nami over there. Where are you, Nami? You're actually up there behind that tree. You can just kind of see her orange hair. Uh, Either Nami up there be queen. A lot of people like putting Luffy and Nami together, or um, or have it be Robin, because Robin and Nami have been through the freaking ringer. Um, so Nami, let's just talk about Nami for a quick second. Nami is a war orphan. All right, Nami was found as an infant on a battlefield. Okay, her and her sister Nojiko were found as infants. Now, as far as we know, there is no blood relation, okay, between them. Um, but so they are basically just adopted sisters. But they were found as children, as like not. I think Nami was like an infant. Not sure about Nojiko. I think Nojiko's maybe a year or so older than her, so she might have been a slightly older child. But they were found by uh, a kind marine lady who kind of took them in, and when their parents couldn't be found, they were likely victims of the war going on at the time. Uh, she kind of took them in and became their adopted mother, and things were fine for many a year, until one day the Fishmen pirates, led by Arlong, came along, and they murdered Nojiko and Nami's adopted mother right in front of them. And then after that, Arlong promised Nami, who at the time was like 8 years old, and Nojiko is like, I think she's 2 years older. So like when they were found, Nami was an infant and Nojiko was like two-ish, okay? So a toddler basically. Um, and yeah, then Arlong basically tells little Nami, who is freaking 8 years old, if you can gather up 100,000 or 100 million berries or something like that, which is the money in the One Piece world, and actually, if you look at Nami, you can kind of see it there on her belt buckle. Um, her belt buckle. How close can I get to you? I'm not trying to look at your boobs, Nami. I mean, I've done that enough already. On her belt buckle is the symbol for berries. Basically, if you've ever seen the symbol for Japanese yen, just replace the Y with a B, okay? But basically, Arlong told little Nami, if you can get, X amount of berries for me, then I will hand over control of this island home of yours to you. You like, we'll just up and leave. Of course, Arlong had no intention of actually honoring this promise, but friggin' Nami actually spends the next 10 years. She was 8 years old when this happens. She spends the next 10 years. She's 18 by the time she meets Luffy and the gang. And she's almost at her goal, and eventually she hits it, and then she goes to see Arlong, and then Arlong basically tricks her by having her men kind of come along to where she keeps the money and make it disappear. So he's like, oh, well, Nami, I guess you can't do it. Oh, well. And all the while he was forcing, like, whenever Nami returned home, he would make Nami make maps for him. So that he could make, like, once the fishmen have all these maps, they'll know the whole world, and they'll know where anybody that could be an enemy of them is, and yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, that's that's a pretty messed up childhood. Like I said, the Straw Hats have kind of all been through the ringer. Uh, but I think some of them have had it worse than others, and Nami is definitely one of them. Good thing that Luffy and the gang showed up and beat the shit out of Arlong and his goons. But then the other person who's had it pretty rough out of the both of the ladies have been through the ringer. Robin. Robin lost her mother. Her mother was gone for a very long time. I believe she was part of the Revolutionary Army or something. And she kind of was taken care of by a friend of the family. But then she gets to see her mom again after so many years. And then her mother is immediately killed. So once again, we have a mother killed pretty much right in front of their child. But on top of that, you had the friend who was a giant named Jaguar, who was taking care of young Robin, and he is also killed pretty much right in front of her. So, you know, basically both her mother and her father figure, because we don't know like who Robin's father was. We see her mother, but we don't know who her father was. But basically her mother and her father figure are both gone, like just like that. And then not only that, she's been on the run for most of her life because Robin is naturally gifted in reading things called poneglyphs. Okay? Now, poneglyphs are these huge stone tablets that are written in an ancient language that tell the true history of the world, primarily about the thing called the Void Century. And in the Void Century, like, what's the most dangerous of knowledge that you can gain from reading the poneglyphs and learning about the Void Century is the location of the 3 ancient weapons. Okay? And the 3 ancient weapons are all kind of named after gods. Okay? Now, we know what one of them is. Okay, we know what one is, but we haven't seen it yet. We have seen one of them, and it'll actually surprise you when you see it. And then number 3, we know nothing about. Okay, but these poneglyphs will tell you their locations. Okay, so the one that we know what it is, but we haven't seen it, is called Pluton. It's named after Pluto, which is the Roman version of the god Hades, which is the god of the underworld. Okay? And Pluton was basically this massive battleship that was basically a freaking nuke. It would just sail around, and it had the firepower, the raw power to just blow up island after island after island in basically 1 or 2 shots, okay? So you were prodigiously powerful if you had this, okay? So we know what Pluton is. We don't know where it is, but we know what it is, okay? Now, the one we know nothing about, other than its name, is called Uranus. Or Uranus, or Uranus, or whatever. We don't know what that is. We have no idea what that is. Now, the one that we actually do know what it is, and where it is, and what it does, is called Poseidon. Okay? Now you're probably thinking, well, okay, the other 2 actually take names from the Roman version of Greek gods, except for Poseidon. Poseidon's the one that keeps the Greek name, and I think the reason for this is because the Roman version of the god Poseidon is named Neptune, but there was already a king of the mermaids named Neptune, so they went with Poseidon instead for the name. Now, Poseidon is actually the King Neptune's daughter, who is an absolutely massive mermaid, whose name is Princess Shirahoshi. Okay, Shirahoshi is Poseidon, because Poseidon is not so much like a thing as it is like a title passed down to mermaids. And what the special ability of a Poseidon is as a mermaid who has the ability to call out, either consciously or subconsciously. For right now, for Shirahoshi, it's subconsciously. Call out to these massive ocean monsters called Sea Kings. Okay? These things are absolutely gigantic. Okay? And, you know, like, imagine, like, Godzilla and the gang being able to be summoned by a 20-foot freaking tall mermaid lady. Okay? Imagine Ariel blow her up to 20 times her normal size and give her the ability to summon Godzilla and the gang at freaking will, okay? But, that's what Poseidon is. And Robin possesses the ability to read the tablets that could lead you to these things. And the Tenryubito, or the assholes that run the freaking world in One Piece, they don't want anybody to know this information, except for themselves. So anybody that has the ability to read that, they gotta go. So because Robin was just born gifted with the ability to read these things, she's kind of been on the run for most of her life. She's finally found a real home, a real bunch of friends, a family, basically, with the Straw Hats. That's why I think if push comes to shove, Robin will be one of the most fierce defenders of the Straw Hats. She normally is pretty laid back, but I think if anybody really posed a threat to the Straw Hats, like, you know, if all the other Straw Hats were incapacitated and Robin, like maybe maybe the strongest ones like Luffy, Sanji, and Zoro are not present, and the other kind of weaker Straw Hats are all incapacitated, oh, you better believe Robin will unleash the beast. She will kick a ton of ass, I guarantee you, if that ever happens. Because, you know, even members that she doesn't really get along with, like, she can get along with Frankie over there, but she doesn't particularly left or right on him, because some of his actions are kind of rub her the wrong way. But for the most part, she gets along with everybody. Like, even if it's Frankie, you know, ones that she don't get along with, she will fight tooth and nail, guarantee you. So how does she fight, though? Well, she fights using the power of the Hana Hana no Mi, or the, depending on who's doing the translation, the flower or bloom fruit. Now, the name is a misnomer, because her powers have absolutely nothing to do with flowers, okay? Their only connection with flowers is very metaphorical. Basically, what the Hana Hana no Mi lets you do is create copies of your body parts. Okay, now this could be used greatly for reconnaissance. You know, you ever heard the phrase "fly on the wall"? You could literally be an eye on the wall. You could just conjure up a copy of your eyeball and like an ear, and like put them in, like, in a little corner where nobody's gonna notice, and you can just watch everything going on inside a room and hear everything too through this copy of your eye and ear that you spawned out of the freaking wall. Okay, that is the kind of stuff that Robin can do with her powers. Now, normally what she does is she will create copies of her arms, and she'll create multiple copies of them. I think she was limited to like about 100 before the time skip, and now it's like close to like over 1,000, I think, of copies that she can make. Now there are downsides, like if she takes any damage to the copies of her arms, her, you know, physical body, her real body will replicate that damage. So like if you started like breaking the fingers of a, you know, a copied arm, the fingers on her real hand, you know, take damage. But still, like, the crap she can do with this is freaking amazing. She normally fights by spawning copies of her arms in various places on a opponent's body, and then basically kind of just crack their bodies. She calls that clutch. Which, yeah, that sounds as painful as it is. Um, but she can also create like multiple copies of her limbs and then combine them. So like for sheer crushing force, she can summon, hundreds, if not thousands, of copies of her freaking arms and merge them together and form giant fists that she can then just freaking ba 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 on people. She can also have her limbs form into like giant copies of her legs, and then she can just stomp, 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 stomp on people. Another thing she can do is she is one of a handful of devil fruit users that do not turn into like a flying animal or whose power is specifically dedicated to achieving a form of flight, that can use her powers in such a way that she can achieve flight, if only for limited periods. I think she hasn't really used it, I don't think, after the time skip, but she can do it, and I think she probably would be better at it now. Where she can create multiple copies of her arms out of her back and form them into wings, and like big angel wings, and then she can fly with them. But she couldn't fly for very far or for very long before the time skip, although I think now she could probably maintain it better. And then, like, her pretty much ultimate ability that she has right now, like taking this to like the obvious conclusion with its powers, is she can create a complete freaking copy of herself, a complete clone. She can just spawn it out of the ground or whatever, and then now you went from one opponent to two. We don't know if she can create multiple complete copies of herself, like if she could just be a one-woman army and go all Naruto and create like a whole freaking like clone army. I think that'd be a bit broken. Which it kind of was in Naruto, but it made sense because most of Naruto's clones would go down in one hit. I think Robin's clones are more durable than that. But at the same time, she would take damage as all of them are getting hit. But still, just imagine the stuff you could do with Robin's fruit. Just like having literally just extra hands. Like, how like you be in a scenario like, oh, if I only had a third arm, oh, hey, I have the power, I could actually grow a third arm. Or practical jokes would be endless. But then like just the utility factor. And like the way she fights, that's actually like the best way you could probably use that. Use it to like just spawn copies of your arms and like lock your opponent's legs together so they can't move around. Pin their arms behind their back so they can't, attack anymore. And then just spawn a freaking copy of your arm out of the side of their neck and then just start punching them in the freaking head until they freaking, pass out. This is stuff you could do. And, it's a simple way of doing things, but it's so freaking, it's elegant in a way of how simple it is. And I think if anybody out of the remaining Straw Hats, because currently Usopp's got it. Usopp has observation Haki, Sanji has observation and armament, and Zoro, who's not here, has armament and observation as well, and Luffy has all three of armament, observation, and conquerors. If anybody else should get Haki, it should be Robin. And she in particular should get armament Haki, because like just imagine her, solidifying her arms, like turning them black, like basically like iron hard with Haki, and like creating multiple copies of that. That would be amazing the way she could do it. And just, why has Robin not done like a Hana Gatling? Like, Luffy does like the Gum Gum Gatling, and there's other characters that have done Gatling attacks. Why has freaking Robin not done that? Like, she's the one person that wouldn't need to like swing her arms at like super high speeds like Luffy does to do a Gatling attack, She could just create multiple copies of her arms and then just punch the shit out of you with all those freaking arms at once. She should have a Gatling attack. Hana, no Gatling. There you go. She names her attacks, I think, in like a combination of French and Spanish. I think it's mostly French. She's like cien fleur, like 100. Like fleur means flower. It's like she's blooming, she's blossoming her arms like flowers out of random places. That's the loose connection to the whole flower name. But she calls her attacks fleur, like she gives a number, like this is how many copies of a body part she's gonna use. So let's just say like 100 fleur, like 100 flower, like 100 bloom, and then boom, like whatever. Just imagine 100 fleur, Gatling. I want to see that, Robin. Do it. Just go all out. Just like go all out and beat the shit out of somebody with 100 fleur Gatling. Oh God, I love you, Robin. I love you, and I want your powers. Like just utility-wise, I want her powers, or I want Law's. Law's powers would be fucking amazing to have as well. So that leaves only one other member of the Straw Hats that still has a devil fruit power to talk about. And he's right up there. Hi, Brooke.